Give me the hair from your head in exchange for 3 loaves of bread." She thought, "What is my hair compared to my husband's hunger?" So she agreed, and Satan publicly cut off her hair in the marketplace. She brought the bread to me, but Satan...
"Do not worry about that. I have already burned part of his goods and taken the rest. I will deal with his children."
Then Satan destroyed the house where my sons and daughters were gathered, killing them all. Then he struck me with a severe plague, covering me from head to foot with ulcers, worms, and sores. In my misery, I left the city and sat on a pile of ashes, isolated because of my condition. Have you ever faced a moment in life where everything seemed to fall apart? Your wealth, your health, and even your closest relationships. Imagine losing it all in the blink of an eye. What would you do? Would you still trust God? Today, we dive into one of the most powerful and emotional stories ever told, the story of Job. A man of great faith, wealth, and honor who faced unimaginable loss and suffering. Yet through it all, he held on to his faith and emerged stronger than ever. But Job's story isn't just about suffering, it's about perseverance, trust, and restoration. It's about finding hope when the world feels hopeless and seeing light in the darkest of times. So sit back as we journey through Job's trials, his cries for answers, and his ultimate triumph, a story that will inspire you to hold on no matter how heavy the storm. Let's begin the incredible story of Job, the man who never gave up on God. One day, Job felt that his end was near. He called his 7 sons and 3 daughters together and said, "Come close, my children, and I will tell you the story of my life and how the Lord has dealt with me. First, you should know that before God gave me a new name, I was called Jobab. I come from the family of Isaac. I am one of the sons of Esau, Jacob's brother. Long ago, I lived near a temple dedicated to an idol. Every day I saw people bringing offerings and burning sacrifices to it. But as time went on, I couldn't believe that this idol was the true God, the creator of the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all people. I thought about it deeply, wondering how I could know the truth. One night, as I lay in bed, a bright light suddenly filled my room. I heard a voice calling, 'Jobab, Jobab.' I answered, 'Here I am.' The voice said, 'Get up, and I will tell you something important. That idol to which people bring offerings and pour out wine is not a god. It is the work of the evil power that deceives people.' I bowed down and said, 'Lord, you have come to enlighten my soul. Please allow me to cleanse this place that has been polluted by the enemy, so offerings will no longer be made to him. After all, who can stop me? I am the ruler of this land.' The voice from the light replied, 'You can destroy that place, but I must warn you about what will happen afterward. Satan will rise up against you. He will bring many hardships upon you, take away all your possessions and kill your children. However, he will not be able to take your life. If you endure until the end, your name will be remembered for generations. I will restore everything to you and reward you double. You will also rise again with the righteous. So be like a warrior who gives and takes blows, aiming to win the crown of victory. Then you will know that the Lord is just, truthful, and powerful, giving strength to his chosen people.' I, my children, replied, 'I will endure until death and will not turn back.' Then the angel marked my forehead and left. That same night, I gathered 50 of my servants and destroyed the idol's temple, leveling it to the ground. Afterward, I returned home and ordered the doors to be locked. Listen carefully, my children, and be amazed. After I entered my house and shut the doors, I told the guards to say I was unavailable to anyone who came. Satan then arrived, disguised as a beggar, and asked the maid at the door to speak with me. The maid delivered his request, but I told her to say I was busy. Satan left, changed his appearance again, and came back carrying a bag. He said,
Tell Job to give me bread with his own hands so I can eat.
I sent the maid with a loaf of burnt bread and told her, "Tell him not to expect any more bread from me because I am now a stranger to him." The maid, feeling ashamed, gave him a good loaf from her own supply instead. Satan, knowing what happened, said to her,
Go back, unfaithful servant, and bring me the bread your master sent.
She returned crying and admitted her mistake. Then she brought him the burnt bread and delivered my message. "You will eat no more of my bread. I give you this only so you cannot say I refused to help my enemy when he asked." Satan took the bread and sent this reply,
As this bread is burnt and blackened, so I will make your body. In 1 hour I will make your house desolate.
I answered, "Do what you must, for I am ready to endure whatever you bring upon me." Then Satan went straight to heaven and asked God for permission to test me and take away my possessions. God granted it, but not immediately. Now, my children, let me tell you about my life and my wealth before I was tested. I had 130,000 sheep, with 7,000 set aside to clothe orphans, widows, and the poor. A pack of 800 dogs guarded them. I also had 9,000 camels, 3,000 of which were sent to trade goods in cities and distribute supplies to the needy. I owned 130,000 donkeys, and 500 of them were sold to provide money for the poor. The 4 gates of my house were always open so that any poor man who came would never feel ashamed to enter. If someone saw me at one gate and hesitated, he could go to another gate and receive what he needed. Inside my home, I had 30 tables prepared for strangers and 12 for widows. No one left my house empty-handed. Anyone who came asking for help had to sit and eat first. I had 50 bakehouses, 12 of which served food to the poor. Many strangers came to my house, and some wanted to serve the poor but didn't have the means. I lent them money without requiring collateral, just a written acknowledgement. Some prospered and were able to help others, while others failed and returned to me, asking for more time. I tore up their debts and forgave them. Sometimes men with kind hearts came and said, "I can't give to the poor, but let me serve them at your table today." When they left, I paid them wages as if they had worked for me. I also had musical instruments, a psaltery and a 10-stringed lute. After the widows and poor had eaten, I played music to remind them to praise God. If my servants ever complained about their work, I played songs about God's rewards to comfort them and stop their grumbling. And so, this was my life before my trials began. My children took part in daily worship, and afterward they would gather at their eldest brother's house to feast. Every morning I offered sacrifices for them: 30 doves, 50 young goats, 12 sheep, and a choice bull. After praying over these offerings, I had them prepared for the poor, telling them, "Take these as extra provisions and pray for my children." Perhaps in their hearts they might have thought, "We are the children of a wealthy man, and all these goods are ours. Why should we share with the poor and deplete our wealth?" For pride is detestable to the Lord. This was my routine for 7 years after an angel visited me. But then Satan was given permission by God to test me, and he came down in fury. First, he destroyed my 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 donkeys, and 500 pairs of oxen. The rest of my possessions were stolen by the very people I had shown kindness to, who now turned against me. When I was told about this, I gave glory to God and did not complain. Seeing my steadfastness, Satan plotted further. He disguised himself as the king of Persia and stirred up the worthless men of the land. He accused me, saying, "Jobab has consumed the wealth of the land and given it away to the crippled, blind, and needy. He even destroyed the temple of the great God and ruined the place of offerings. It is time he paid for his actions. Attack him and take what is his." But they hesitated, fearing my 7 sons and 3 daughters might escape and seek revenge. Satan reassured them,
Do not worry about that. I have already burned part of his goods and taken the rest. I will deal with his children.
Then Satan destroyed the house where my sons and daughters were gathered, killing them all. When the men saw Satan's words had come true, they plundered my home. I watched as worthless men took over my couches and tables, and I was too weak, like a sick woman, to resist. Yet I reminded myself of the heavenly reward and considered the loss of my possessions as nothing compared to the city the angel had promised. Soon after, a messenger brought the news, "Your sons and daughters are dead." Overcome with grief, I tore my clothes, but still said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. As it pleased the Lord, so it has happened. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Seeing that my faith remained unshaken, Satan asked for permission to afflict my body. God granted him power over my body, but not my life. So Satan came to me as I sat mourning and knocked my throne to the ground, leaving me unconscious for 3 hours. Then he struck me with a severe plague, covering me from head to foot with ulcers, worms, and sores. In my misery, I left the city and sat on a pile of ashes, isolated because of my condition. I had no strength to work, so my wife labored as a servant, carrying water for a rich man who paid her in bread. She shared this bread with me, but her burden broke my heart. I grieved over the pride of the townspeople who treated her as a slave, yet I remained patient. Eventually, they reduced my wife's wages, giving her only half the bread she needed. Still, she shared it with me and even begged from bakers in the marketplace to keep us fed. Seeing this, Satan disguised himself as a bread seller. My wife begged him for mercy, explaining our situation. Satan replied, "If you have no money, give me the hair from your head in exchange for 3 loaves of bread." She thought, "What is my hair compared to my husband's hunger?" So she agreed, and Satan publicly cut off her hair in the marketplace. She brought the bread to me, but Satan followed her invisibly, filling her heart with despair. As she approached, she cried out, "Job, how long will you sit here waiting for deliverance while I labor day and night? Our children are dead, and you sit in filth while I beg for bread. I even sold my hair for food. Look at me, once dressed in fine linen and gold, now barefoot and ragged. Eat this bread, curse God, and die, so my suffering can end." I replied, "For years I have suffered sickness and loss, but nothing has troubled me as much as hearing you suggest cursing God. Should we accept blessings from God and refuse hardships? I know why you speak this way. Someone is influencing your heart. Show yourself." Then Satan revealed himself, ashamed and weeping. He said,
"Job, you have defeated me. You are flesh, and I am a spirit, yet I cannot overcome you."
He left in disgrace. I thought of a fighter who had pinned his opponent to the ground, filling his mouth with dust. Though battered, the pinned man held on, and the attacker eventually gave up. This is how I overcame Satan. My children, I urge you to be patient in all trials. Nothing is stronger than endurance. Many years passed before the news of my suffering reached the ears of the kings who had once been my friends. Satan had caused the matter to be hidden from them. But when they finally heard about my affliction, they left their lands and came to visit me. Among them were Eliphaz of Teman, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu, each accompanied by large entourages. Upon arriving, they asked, "Where is Jobab, the ruler of Uz?" They were told, "He is sitting on a heap of ashes outside the city." They asked what had happened to my wealth, as I had once been richer than all the princes of the East. When they learned about my misfortunes, they came to where I was, accompanied by some men from the city who pointed me out to them. At first, they couldn't believe it was me. They said, "This cannot be Jobab." But the townspeople insisted it was. After much debate, Eliphaz called out to me, "Are you Jobab, our fellow king?" I wept, threw dust on my head, and bowed down to show them it was indeed me. Overcome with shock and grief, they fell to the ground as if dead. They tore their clothes, removed their armor, and sat down in mourning. Elihu raised his voice and lamented, recalling the splendor of my former life, my flocks, riches, golden furniture, jeweled throne, and the beauty of my children. He cried, "Where is the glory of your kingdom now?" When he finished, I said, "Be silent, and I will speak. My throne is in the realm beyond this world, and its glory and beauty are at the right hand of the Father. This world and its splendor will pass away, and those who put their trust in it will be swept away. But my throne is in the land of the holy, and its glory is eternal. The rivers of this world will dry up, but the rivers of my land will never fail and will water it forever. Kings will vanish and rulers will be forgotten like reflections in a mirror, but my kingdom will last forever, and its glory is as the chariot of the Most High." Eliphaz grew angry and said, "Let us leave him to his madness. Why did we come all this way to comfort him if he insults us, saying our kingdoms will perish, but his will last forever?" He was ready to leave, but Bildad calmed him, saying, "Remember, he is sick in body and mind. Perhaps he is not in his right senses." Bildad and Zophar questioned me to see if I was sane, and I answered them clearly. Finally, Zophar asked, "What can we do for you? We brought the best doctors from our kingdoms. Do you want them to treat you? Perhaps they can help." I replied, "My healing and medicine come from the Lord, who created doctors and gave them their knowledge." While we spoke, my wife Sittis arrived, dressed in rags. She had escaped from her master's house, where she was kept out of fear that the kings would hold him accountable for our mistreatment. She fell before Eliphaz and said, "Do you remember how I looked and dressed in better days? Look at me now." The kings were heartbroken and wept, but said nothing. Eliphaz took off his purple robe and placed it on her shoulders. Sittis pleaded with them, "Please command your servants to search the ruins of the house that collapsed on our children, so we can bury their bones and set up a memorial. We could not do this before because we had no money. Consider my suffering. I lost 10 children, and not one has been buried." The kings agreed to dig, but I stopped them and said, "Do not waste your effort. You will not find my children, for the king who created them has taken them to heaven." They looked at me in disbelief and said, "You must be mad. Show us what you mean." I asked them to lift me up so I could stand, and they helped me. I prayed to the Father and told them, "Look to the east." When they did, they saw my children crowned with glory in heaven, surrounded by the glory of the Most High. Seeing this, Sittis fell on her face and worshipped God. She said, "Now I know God has remembered me." She then returned to the city, went into the stable where her cattle had been kept before being taken from her, lay down by a manger and died in peace. The next day, her master searched for her and found her dead. He called others, and the whole city came to see her lying in the stable, with the animals standing around her mourning. They took her body and buried her near the ruins of the house that had fallen on our children. As for the words spoken by Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu, and my responses to them, they are written in a book for remembrance. You also know how at the end the Lord spoke to me out of the whirlwind and rebuked us. We repented for our wrong words, except for Elihu, in whom Satan had entered. He spoke evil against me and left without seeking forgiveness. You know how the Lord restored my fortunes, giving me twice as much as I had before. I married your mother, and she bore me 7 sons and 3 daughters, as you see today. Now, my sons, I am dying. Never forget the Lord. Help the poor, show kindness to the helpless, and do not marry women from among the heathen. Job said, "I will share my wealth among you, and each of you will receive your portion in peace." So Job divided his wealth among his 7 sons, but he didn't give anything to his daughters. Upset, they asked, "Father, aren't we also your children?" He replied, "Don't worry, for I have prepared an inheritance for you that is far better than what your brothers received." He called his eldest daughter and gave her his signet ring, saying, "Go to the treasure room and bring me the 3 golden boxes you'll find there." When she returned with them, he opened the boxes and took out 3 cords, giving one to each of his daughters. The cords were extraordinarily beautiful, with multiple colors that sparkled like rays of sunlight. He said, "Wear these around your waists and keep them with you for the rest of your lives." Keziah, the second daughter, asked, "Father, is this the great inheritance you promised us? What use are these cords? Can we live on them?" Job replied, "Not only can you live on them, but they will also guide you into a better life. Don't you know the value of these cords? The Lord gave them to me on the day he had mercy on me and healed me of my sickness. He told me, 'Stand up, brace yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you will answer me.' When I put the cords on, all my sores and diseases disappeared, and my body became as strong as if I had never been ill. Even the pain and sorrow in my heart vanished. These cords are your protection. As long as you wear them, the enemy cannot harm you, not even by planting evil thoughts in your minds. Now, get up and put them on before I leave this world." The daughters obeyed, and as soon as they wore the cords, their hearts were transformed. They forgot all worldly concerns and began speaking in the language of angels, singing praises to the Lord of heaven, and describing the glory of his kingdom and his mighty works. I, Nahor, Job's brother, who wrote this testament, witnessed these events. I wrote down as much as I could so that future generations might learn of the wonders of the Lord. 3 days later, Job lay on his bed, but he was free of pain or illness, as no disease had touched him since the day he wore the heavenly cords. On the 3rd day, he sensed the approach of those who had come to carry away his soul. He rose and gave his eldest daughter a harp, the second a censer, and the third a musical instrument, instructing them to greet the heavenly visitors. As they held these items, they saw chariots of light approaching and sang hymns of praise and gratitude in the language of the holy places. The one seated in the great chariot came forward and gently took Job's soul, embracing it in front of his daughters. No one else saw this, but they witnessed the chariot carrying Job's soul toward the sunrise. 3 days later, we prepared Job's body for burial. Crowds of widows, orphans, and the helpless gathered around us, mourning and crying, "Woe to us! The one who was our strength, light, and refuge is gone." They didn't want his body to be hidden from their sight. When we carried him to the tomb, his 3 daughters walked ahead, wearing the heavenly cords and singing hymns and psalms of gratitude. We laid Job in the tomb, and it seemed as though he was merely asleep. Truly, he left behind a name that would be honored and remembered for all generations. Job's story teaches us that no matter how dark the storm, faith in God can sustain us and lead to restoration and blessings. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments by writing, "I will trust God through every storm." And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories, and share this with someone who needs encouragement today. Thank you for watching, and may your faith always remain strong.